Hey, it's me again, Keeler Bryson with Teachable Life Moments, and I am here to chime in on the fourth session that I taught today on the Code of Conduct. Today we dealt with, I'm ready to sign those papers, ending an unhealthy relationship. So, I just want to do a real quick recap of some of the things that was covered in today's session. Unfortunately, there are times when we're going to have to end an unhealthy relationship. We try to work with them. We try to hang in there. We try to pray about it. We try to talk to the person about it. But sometimes the bottom line is that unhealthy relationship has to end. And whether it's a romantic relationship, a workplace relationship, a friendship type of relationship, sometimes when things don't get better, we're left with no choice but to end it for the sake of progressing forward. So today we talked about how Paul and Barnabas had a disagreement, and it was over John Mark. And we all know that Barnabas was the one who received Paul when he was Saul, and as a result, their relationship began to develop and they began to do ministry work together. But at some point, there was a disagreement on whether to take John Mark with them on their next journey. And then the first fell out because John Mark abandoned them. So when the second opportunity came around for them to take another missionary trip, Paul was not wanting John Mark to go, but Barnabas did. Barnabas, his name means the encourager. And he was an encourager. After all, he was the first person to receive Saul when all the other Christians were afraid of Saul, because after all, he was persecuting the Christians. But he received Saul, and then Saul later became Paul. They began to do work. And Barnabas was the type of person where he was into giving people second chances, because look, he gave Saul a second chance. And so they disagreed because John Mark abandoned them during that first trip, and so Paul didn't want to take him, but Barnabas did. And so they decided to go their separate ways on that second trip, missionary trip. Barnabas chose to go ahead and move with John Mark, while Paul decided, nope, I'm just going to move on. However, later on, he connected with Silas. He and Silas worked together, and Silas helped to co-author most of the epistles with Paul. So, the question I want to ask you, are you a Paul or are you a Barnabas? That's important in a relationship, because if you are a Paul, then we know that you're pretty much focused. Your answer is no. You're not going to compromise your mission, your destiny, or whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Barnabas, on the other hand, is the opposite. He can always see potential in people. He wants to be that encourager. He's willing to take the risk on people, like he did with Paul before he became Paul. He took a risk with him. And so being Paul or Barnabas will vary at times. Sometimes we need to be Paul in our relationships. Sometimes we need to be Barnabas in our relationships. But the point of it is to know which one you are more likely to behave like, because that can affect your ability to have good relationships. Because if you're a Barnabas all the time, then maybe you're experiencing relationships where you're just too forgiving, where you just giving too many second chances, and you're not seeing any results when it comes to that unhealthy relationship. Whereas Paul was a type, he was always saying no, no, no. He was focused, wasn't giving any second chances. And sometimes in unhealthy relationships, if you're that type of person, that can be a hindrance to developing a healthy relationship, because you're just non-tolerant. You're no tolerance type person. So pay attention to which one of those you tend to gravitate to. So when we're having an unhealthy relationship, and we've identified that this person, first of all, I've got to end it because I've talked to them on several occasions and they just can't correct the problem. They continue to violate my boundaries. They continue to do the things that I've brought to their attention that offends me, and I'm just not seeing them have any growth or change or anything like that. If you're seeing that they cannot accept the change in your status, for example, you may get a promotion, you may get married, you may get a new house, a new car, or whatever, and if these people can't seem to accept that change, then that's a sign potentially that you need to end the relationship, because when people can't accept you moving up, that's a problem. They'll end up, hating on you, being a stumbling block to you, criticizing you, making you feel guilty for your success and just the blessings that God has bestowed upon you. And no one wants to continue to argue and encounter drama simply because there's been a change in your status. Sometimes people like to, they love us when we stay the same. They love us when we're not changing. They love us when we're not evolving. They love us as long as we're fitting in with what the clique that they have historically been a part of in our past. But once we begin to develop and grow and move forward, everybody's not going to be happy about that. So if you are in a relationship, an unhealthy relationship, where the people cannot seem to accept a change in your status, then you may need to end that relationship. If you're in a relationship and people cannot accept the change in direction that your life is going in, then you may need to consider ending that relationship. Because otherwise, that person, that group of people, all they will do is try to talk you out of going in that new direction. Why do you want to go in that new direction? They will ask. Are you sure? Are you sure that's God? Or they will sometimes make you think that, I don't think God told you that. But you know that God told you whatever it is that you're doing. You know when you're feeling led by the Spirit of God or feel in your heart that you need to go in a different direction. And at the end of the day, the only person you owe an explanation to is yourself. You know within your spirit when it's time to make a change and go in a different direction. And even God gives us the power of choice to make some changes in our lives. And a lot of times the problem comes in is when we were apart in a relationship with somebody or in a relationship with a group of people, with a job, or whether it's with your church or with a professional organization that you volunteer with. People just don't like when you change directions. It scares them. It makes them feel uncomfortable, or it makes them feel like, who are you to do that? And so sometimes those people can become a hindrance to you. The third reason of when you know it's time to end an unhealthy relationship, when this group of people or this person can no longer be consistent or loyal to you in the face of stress or challenges. A lot of times this happens when folks are going through some really hard, dark times. People tend to abandon them because they don't, for one reason or another, maybe they just don't want to be there for your support. Maybe they don't want to provide the money that you may need to borrow from them. Maybe they just don't have the strength to be there for you. And so if you're in a bad spot and that person abandons you during that time, people have a way of showing you who they are when you're down. And it may not necessarily mean you have to totally cut them off, but you definitely want to consider ending that relationship, especially if it's been unhealthy all along. We need no dead weight on us when we're trying to move forward. Everybody needs to do their part. Everybody needs to contribute. And we want to be around people that affirm us, people that build us up, and people that are there when we need them the most. Because I'm here to tell you, when you're down and you're in that dark place, that is a lonely, horrible feeling. And to have nobody that you can call on in the flesh, nobody that you can depend on, because they vacated you, almost like they want you to drown or to die. And so pay attention to that. If you're experiencing that all of a sudden, then you need to look at that relationship and examine it closer. If you're in a relationship with a person or a group of people, and this group of people you can no longer depend on them. They used to be very reliable, but now all of a sudden, they're missing in action. They're not calling like they used to. They're not stopping by. They're not emailing or what have you. something has changed. And we know in good, healthy relationships, we have to be able to rely on one another. And when you start feeling like you can't rely upon them as long as you are doing what you want to do, they're not reliable, then you need to look at that, because nobody wants to be in a relationship where it's unequal, where you're doing all the giving on your end, but you're not getting back what you need in that relationship. And so when it comes time, you've decided that I need to end this relationship. How do you end it? There are many ways to end unhealthy relationships. A lot of times we want to end it in a way that makes us look good. We want to end it in a way that makes us feel better or justifies the reason why we're leaving that relationship. And sometimes we can get in the flesh in doing that. But I propose to you that when you're getting ready to end an unhealthy relationship, because after all, it's not going to be easy always. Sometimes it's difficult, because we thought when we entered that relationship that it was going to last forever, not knowing that we were going to evolve. One of us was going to begin to change and want to go in a different direction, have a different vision for our life. And so it becomes challenging, because a lot of times we are deeply rooted in some of these relationships emotionally, deeply invested financially, as far as time and effort and money and prayers and just love and concern. But and so that makes it a little difficult to end it. But when you're getting ready to end it, there are three things that you need to keep in mind. What are you going to say about this? What are you going to think about the situation? Because when you make your mind up that you're going to leave, you need to have your mind made up. You need to know that you're really being led by God to do it, because people will try to talk you out of it. They'll try to use your words against you to make you think that you got it all wrong and mixed up and confused and you missed God and what have you. First of all, know what you're going to think about it. Have your mind made up. You know why you're leaving. List out the reasons why you're leaving. Then you need to figure out what you're going to say to bring closure to this relationship. And then you need to figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to respond when others ask you, why did you cut off that relationship? Why did you end that relationship with so-and-so? Why did you end that relationship? Because people want to know. This applies to business partners, ministry colleagues, and many other types of alliances that we find ourselves in. Now, here is the thing. When people ask you that question, I know your flesh is going to want to list all the reasons to justify and to make yourself so-called look good while you're leaving this relationship or ending it. But you want to say less is possible. And you want to say, well, it was just time for me to go in a different direction. Or we both had two different visions about how this particular situation should have worked out. But you know what? I learned a lot from him, or I learned a lot from her. She was great to work with, but it was just time for us to go in a different direction to achieve different missions and desires that we have in mind. And leave it at that. Don't go into the detail, because I'm here to tell you, people pretty much have an idea of what's going on. They don't always know the details, and they don't really need to know the details, but they pretty much have an idea anyway, but they just want to hear what you have to say. And so therefore you have to be careful what you say, because the situation can get ugly, because people will take what you say out of context, and it's usually never the way that you said it or in the spirit that you said it. When it's time to leave or end a relationship, you want to be sincere, because people know when you're not being authentic. You want to be honest. You want to speak in love. You want to be clear about where you are on your life's journey, so that people will know that, you know where you're going, and then they won't miscommunicate what you meant to say. So be very clear in what you say. Do not assign blame. A lot of times people want to blame this person and blame that person. Don't even do that. Take responsibility for your role in the relationship ending. Share what you've learned from the relationship. And because you want to create an opportunity for reconciliation, or create an opportunity to come back together in the future perhaps, and work on something together. And a lot of times if we say things that we shouldn't say and put that person down, it's hard to restore that relationship. And even though you've been hurt in that relationship, I know this makes it even more challenging when you were hurt in that relationship, to try to be positive and to speak positively about that person. But you've got to do it anyway. I have learned this from my experience. It's not always easy, but it's doable. because you don't know how God's going to turn the situation around. And if you've damaged it with your words and burned a bridge with it, then it's kind of hard to kind of go back and try to reconcile that situation. So those are the steps that we need to do if we're going to end that relationship. We want to say less is possible. We want to have our thoughts together, and we want to have a positive response to others when they ask, why aren't you with this person anymore? What happened with that situation? We have to be careful because in the Bible, when Paul and Barnabas separated, in the end, Paul ended up calling and saying, you know what, send for John Mark. I need him. I have found him to be valuable to me in the ministry. And that's found in 2 Timothy 4 and 11, where Paul, whereas initially he didn't want to use John Mark, but in the end he needed him. And it's all because we handled the situation in a way where we could go back and call upon that person. And that's how we should handle our relationships. I know it's difficult. Even in class today, some of the folks were saying, well, if a person hurt me, it's really hard to have something positive to say. I can't even think of anything positive to say. Well, you can say, I learned a lot from them. And you did. It may not have all been good, but you learned a lot that you can use in your future relationships. And so that's how we end unhealthy relationships. After all, the relationship started out great in the beginning. Evidently, the person has something good about them for us to even enter the relationship with them to begin with. So let's start and begin to be a people that try to end relationships gracefully and with loyalty and covering people, even though technically we have a right. We have some justifiable reasons to really drag them under the bus. But let's take the higher road and not do that and just esteem people even when they've hurt us, misused us, mistreated us. We still want to handle it with grace and with dignity, because that's just how a top-notch person operates. And this part was really challenging to me. It caused me to go back and think, man, how did I handle all my relationships, and did I handle that right? And but it's just to help us to know that if we want to do it in a way where we have peace and we don't defile our spirit, this is the way to handle it. Let it go. Be truthful enough with yourself and with people to let them know the truth about the situation. Because sometimes things are just not working. And although it's hard, we have to end them sometimes. Not doing a divorce, not when I say I'm ready to sign the papers, I'm not saying literally, but metaphorically, sometimes relationships get to that point where it's time to end it because you're changing, you're doing things that is making you come out of character, is bringing health issues upon your life. You're sick, your blood pressure is up, you're stressed, your hair is falling out, you're angry and irritable and cranky, and it's just, you're acting out of character. You're saying things and doing things. You may be scratching up somebody's car, breaking out their windows, and when it gets to that point, it's time to end it before somebody end up catching a case. And nobody has time for that. It's better to just end that thing and move on and let God send you some new, better relationships that are going to work, because now you know how to operate in a relationship with friends and lovers and romantic relationships and co-workers and in the workplace. It's work being in a relationship. And the best thing to do is when you see it's not working after you've given it time to get corrected, end it. Somebody asks, why do we stay in relationships when we know they're unhealthy? We know it's draining the life out of us. And sometimes I think it's because we think that we can't do any better than that relationship. We think we can't find a better job, or we feel like we can't find a better boyfriend or girlfriend, or we don't think we can find people that will love us like these people seem to love us. Or I think a lot of times it's just maybe we have low self-esteem about ourselves. for us to even allow ourselves to be mistreated and abused and treated in an unhealthy way. It could be that we don't even have any value about ourselves. We don't even value ourselves, evidently, because we put up with it, we tolerate it, and we don't put an end to it. And so whatever that reason is, I challenge you to study your life's pattern when it comes to relationship and behaviors. Why are you letting yourself stay in an unhealthy relationship? That goes in line with code of conduct number 1, know yourself. Know yourself, study yourself. Why do you do that? Is it because you feel like this is the best you can do? You feel like you can't find another one? Is it because you don't love yourself? Is it because you think that's the best you deserve? Whatever it is, get to the root of it, because it will affect your ability to have healthy relationships. You'll always continue to attract the same thing, because really you're projecting your self-worth of what you think you are worth, or how valuable you think you are. So I hope that helped. Instead of typing something up, I wanted to do a video to try to give it a little bit more justice. I hope it's clear, because a lot of times you go back and watch these videos and you're like, oh, I didn't say that right. But anyway, share this video, inbox me your comments and let me know what you think. And if this is helping you, if you like more information, you can inbox me for that information. And I'll be with you and touch base with you on next week when we wrap up the final session, where we're going to deal with, it's entitled Relationship Goals, where we're going to talk about how to be healed, healthy, and whole, and all of that. All right, this is Keeler Bryson with Teachable Life Moments. And until next time, take care and have a great week.